Hey, what's going on, guys? So today I want to show you my top favorite unique items that you can use on most of the builds and are very cheap and in my opinion are very underused. Also, some of them you can invest a lot of money into them so that you can even use them on a lot of endgame builds. So let's start with the first one, which is Elegant Hubris. So the way you can acquire this unique is through domain of Timeless Conflict, and you need to use the Eternal Empire emblem to have a chance to drop it. So this is, I believe, the most underused Timeless Jewel. Not that many builds are using it, and it's mostly because of the fact that when you put it on your passive tree, the small things will not give you anything. Only the big ones will give you a lot of stats. But the reason why I really like it, it's not because of the mods that it gives on notables, but because of the Caspiro line. So if you're gonna roll it with Divine Orb, you can get either Caspiro, Kadiro, or Victario. And if you get Caspiro, it will transform the Keystone into the Supreme Ostentation, which gives you ignore attribute requirements. So this is really powerful and very useful when you are starting to make a build, and this is worth like 10, 15C maybe. So most of the builds can afford it, and if you are using Supreme Ostentation, you don't have to worry about attributes on your gear at all for your builds. And some of the builds obviously get more out of it. Some of the builds do not really require attributes, but it certainly is very useful. Also, it will give you the second line, so gain no inherent bonuses from attributes. So if you are going for melee builds, you will not gain live melee physical damage from your strength, so it is actually not that very useful for melee builds. But if you're going for some kind of evasion build or spell build that is not energy shield based, it is really good because you're not really losing that much. So later on, you can also invest into it, and you can also roll for a nice seed, so the 2000 to 160k. So you can roll for some really powerful notables. So here is a full list of all of the modifiers that you can get. So you can get a lot of damage, for example 80% fire, cold, lightning, physical, and so on. Minions deal 80% increased damage is actually really powerful because there isn't really that much increased damage for minion builds on a tree. And if you're gonna use Elegant Hubris over here, you have access to a lot of notables that are only like 2 or 3 points away, so you can get a lot of them over here. And if you're gonna get 2 of the 80% minion damage, so like 160%, it is worth it in my opinion. Also, there is 15% chance to gain power charge on crit, which is also really powerful. Gain endurance charge every second if you've been hit recently, and 10% chance to get frenzy charge on hit. And getting a frenzy charge on hit is actually really a rare mod to have. Most of the people just get it on a rare chest, and it is very good for bossing because most of the frenzy charges generation are on kill. And also there is 40% crit multi, which is also very powerful if you stack crit. So just to sum it up, Elegant Hubris is really powerful when you are starting a build because you don't have to worry about attributes thanks to Supreme Ostentation, and eventually you can invest into some good mods to just increase your overall damage. So that was number 1. Now let's talk about number 2, which is Zerphi Heart. So Zerphi Heart gives you some average mods like add chaos damage can ignite, chill or shock, but the most important line is you gain Soul Eater for 20 seconds when you use a Val skill. So any Val skill like Val Grace, Val Haze and so on, you will get Soul Eater buff. So let's look at the wiki and let's see what is Soul Eater. So Soul Eater is a buff. That's very good line, but let's look more into it. So Soul Eater is stackable buff that gives 5% increased attack speed, 5% cast speed and 1% character size per stack. And you gain stack every time you kill something. So you can actually stack it by a lot, like up to like 100 stacks, even more. So you can attack very, very fast. And usually the way you get Soul Eater is through Headhunter, because you can steal Soul Eater from rare mods. And when I am streaming, actually a lot of people are asking me how I have a Headhunter early on in the league when I am playing in like a first week of the league, but I actually don't have it. I just have a Zerphi's Heart, because most of the people think that the Soul Eater that I gain is from a Headhunter, which is not. So when you are using a Headhunter and you are attacking really fast, it's mostly because of this buff. So the way you would use it, you would just enter map, kill some monsters, get stacks for your Val skill, use a Val skill, and for 20 seconds you have Soul Eater. You start gaining stacks and you will attack very, very fast, even like 10-20 times per second. After 20 seconds you will lose buff, you will use your Val skill again and you will start gaining it again. So it is actually a very powerful mechanic. And the way you acquire Zerphi Heart is through the Temple of Atsuatl. So you have to kill a boss, you will drop Sacrificial Heart, and there's also a small chance to drop a Vial of Sacrifice, and it's actually very, very rare. I actually have never dropped it since the Incursion League, so for like few years. And you use in Apex of Ascension room Sacrificial Heart plus Vial of Sacrifice, and you upgrade it into the Zerphi's Heart. But there is a second way, which is Life Thief card, and you get it from, I believe, Crimson Temple. Yes, and because of this heart, Zerphi's Heart is usually around 1 exalt, and I believe right now it is only 70C, so it's a very cheap item, and a lot of builds that can benefit from attack speed and cast speed can use it. And even in endgame builds you can also use it. Okay, so now let's talk about the third one, which is Megalomaniac. So Megalomaniacs are usually very hard to get good ones. So the way it works is it is a medium cluster jewel and it drops from simulacrums, and it will give you 3 random mods from any cluster jewels. So it can be from large ones, from medium ones, and from small ones. And that's the reason why it can be really powerful, because you can get certain combination on a medium cluster jewel that you normally can't get. The negative side of it is that it actually doesn't have the jewel slot. So that's the downside. But because the mods are so random, you can actually get it pretty cheap. And for example, if you want something like I have here, Numbing Elixir, which will give you 40% reduced effect of curses on you. Normally you can get it on some medium cluster jewel for flasks, and to be honest, there isn't really anything good on the flask jewel except for Numbing Elixir. And if you would want to stack it, have like 2 or maybe 3 Numbing Elixir, you would lose a lot of potential good mods on your cluster jewels. And thanks to the Megalomaniac, you can get something else that would normally you would not be able to get in that slot. So for example, here I have Tempered Arrowheads, which normally you can get on large cluster jewel for bows. So that's a combination that you would normally not be able to get. Second good example is, for example, here I have on my large cluster jewel Doriani Lesson, which gives you leech. And if you are playing some kind of build that doesn't benefit from large cluster jewels that much, you can just use a medium one with Doriani Lesson and just look for some random one. And the reason I also like this jewel is because you can invest a lot into it. So I believe I bought this one for like 1 exalt, which is not that much. But if you get some really powerful one with 3 really good modifiers, it can be one of the best possible cluster jewels you can use. So now let's look at number 4. So this one is Replica Conqueror Efficiency. So actually this one is not that underused, and I'm also gonna be talking about the other Conqueror's jewels. So this one is worth like 10-15 C, and the most important mod is -9 total mana cost. So it's very powerful, especially early on in the league and in the stages of your build when you are struggling with mana, especially after the changes to mana. Also, it's pretty good for leveling when you are using like Tabula Rasa and you have a 6-ring during leveling. A lot of your skills will use a lot of mana, so reducing that mana cost can be really powerful. Also, you can use only one of them. It is limited to 1, and it will also give you skill effect duration and maximum rate. So it's especially good when you are using it on something that benefits from these 2 mods. Also, the way you get it is, this one is a replica, so this one you get from the blueprints, and it is item level depends on the level of blueprints, but any other one, Conqueror Jewel, you get it from the quest in Act 8. In a buff house, you have to kill 1 boss and you will loot quest item and you exchange it for Conqueror Jewel. And the third one is not that good, so I only included 2 here. Conqueror Potency and Conqueror Efficiency, and they will always be item level 1. So when you are gonna be valuing them, you will not be able to get corrupted blood, which is a good thing to know. But you can get reduced mana reservation as a corruption. So it still can be pretty good. So Conqueror Potency will give you increased flask effectiveness and effect of your curses, which is also pretty nice. And the efficiency will reduce your mana reservation and cost of your skills and skill effect duration. So especially it is good one for reducing the reservation of your mana. If you are using a lot of auras, you can use this jewel to reduce that reservation if you need like few percentage. And it's especially good with corruption, so you can have up to 3% reduced mana reservation. And the last one, it's not really 1 item, but 5 of them. So the circle rings. So these rings drop from synthesis map bosses, and they have a lot of modifiers on them. So there is 5 of them: regret, guilt, nostalgia, anguish, and fear. And each one of them will give you mods for certain herald. So 1 for Herald of Ice, Ash, Agony, Purity, and Thunder. And let's look at the possible outcomes. For example, here this is the Circle of Anguish for Herald of Ash. So you can get reduced mana reservation, increased fire damage while you are affected by Herald of Ash, increased effect of the buff, +1 to maximum fire res, and 50 to 60% fire resistances while affected by Herald of Ash. So any other Herald, so like Herald of Ice and so on, will have their version of it. So they would have Herald of Ice have reduced mana reservation, you would have cold resistances, cold maximum res, cold fire damage, and so on. Also, it gives you some strength, all attributes and so on, depending on the ring. Also some flat damage and resistances, so fire res, chaos res, and so on. So these rings, let me show you on the trade side. So if you would check, for example, Circle of Anguish, it costs like 1C. So it's not very expensive, but it also has a lot of different variations. And this is why I also like this ring, is that you actually can invest a lot into it. Like the best ones can be worth 100 exalts or even multiple mirrors if you get really good variation. But because not only you care about the 2 possible modifiers for Herald, but also you care about the synthesis modifiers. So most of the builds require 1 ring to have some kind of curse on hit. And if you don't have that much money, early on in the league, you will just buy any ring with just Despair or like Flammability, LA Weakness or so on hit, and just some random resistances or life. And if you will go for one of these rings, you can go for example, Implicit, curse enemies with Elemental Weakness on hit. So this one would be worth 50 chaos, and as you can see here, as an implicit, you will get curse with Elemental Weakness, and also you will get some of these random modifiers. And some of them are really powerful, like Herald of Ash has reduced mana reservation, fire resistance decent, increased fire damage while affected by Herald of Ash. That's a really powerful one. Obviously, if you would go for something like this, which is increased fire damage and increased buff effect, while at the same time having LA weakness on hit, that actually might not even exist. If you would go for, let's say, Flammability, that would be like 100 exalts. So yes, it can be very expensive, but if you are if you don't have that much money, you can just go for either good 2 mods or very good implicit. And here I listed most of the powerful implicits. So for example, you can actually get Onslaught on hit, which is nowadays is not that easy to get Onslaught. So if you are struggling to get it, you can just get Onslaught on hit and some 2 decent mods, or maybe even 2 best ones. Yeah, but some of them obviously will not exist. You can also get Arcane Surge on hit, maximum Frenzy and Duress on power charge, and some Leech. And here in POE DB, when you go to the jewelry rings, you can see at the bottom all of the possible synthesis modifiers. So you can check the full list of what mods you can get. So as you can see here, you can get the Onslaught, Arcane Surge, some stats, charges, and so on. So this ring is very powerful. Again, early on, you can just get, for example, LA Weakness, Circle of Anguish. That would be like 20, 50C, depending on the other mods. If you would go, for example, for Circle of Regret, again, like 70C or something. So it's very good to replacement for rare rings with curses, with some powerful modifiers for your heralds. So that's it. In terms of these 5 uniques, there is obviously a lot more of them, but I do believe these ones are not really that used, and they also can be used in early stages of the build, and if you invest a lot of money into them, you can use them on your powerful high-end builds. So that's gonna be it in this video. Thanks for watching and see you next time.